Welcome to the Stuck Mic AvCast. My name is Carl Valerian. I'll be your host today. I'm joined by Leslie Caldwell and also Bill English, and we have a really interesting episode. For the first time since 2001, aircraft representing virtually every chapter of general aviation's history flew over the National Mall in Washington, D.C. for the National Celebration of Aviation. Part of this flyover was our very own Bill English, who's here today to discuss the historic event. Hey, Bill, it's great to see you at Leesburg, Virginia. It's awesome to have you here today.
Hey, thanks, Carl. Great to be here and happy to talk about this really once-in-a-lifetime experience.
Absolutely must have been. And also Leslie is joining us. And Leslie, you are joining us from Cape Coral, I think it was?
I'm in Cape Coral, Florida, and it's sunny, hot, and humid. And not even June yet. Well, I guess we are in June now.
I guess we are. Yeah, we are in June now.
The time is going by fast.
It's going really, really fast. But we all are actually having a wonderful time celebrating general aviation. And there's some people that are actually helping people get involved in general aviation. And that's actually the sponsors of this episode, and that's STEM Flights. And they're a national nonprofit organization that connects middle and high school students with volunteer pilot mentors to learn about science, technology, engineering, and math. STEM. They inspire America's youth to pursue STEM and aviation careers with a unique flight experience. And to find out more about STEM flights, listen to our episode 388, where Carley Walker describes the benefits of becoming involved with STEM flights as a volunteer or a participant. Oh, by the way, they're also giving away those scholarships guides, and you can find those scholarships guides for free at stuckmicavcast.com/free and use that coupon code STEMFlights. And if you want to help someone fly, get started with flying, do a discovery flight, add additional rating, one of the ways you can do that is through the Pay It Forward program. Go to stuckmicavcast.com/payitforward. Thanks again to our sponsor, STEM Flights. Use that coupon code STEMFlights to get your free scholarship guide. It might be for an additional rating, maybe get your seaplane rating. Well, again, let's move on to the cruise flight, and we're here again with Bill English to discuss this amazing event that took place in Washington, D.C. And amazingly enough, this was just out of luck. I just happened to be there for this event, and down there on the National Mall, took this really cool picture. And as you know, I work for the airline, so sometimes we don't know where we're going, and I wound up there late the night before, and kind of didn't look at my calendar, and did not realize that this incredibly famous event was going on, and I actually missed most of it. I only got to see one small airplane, and that wasn't actually during the whole flying. But actually, I'm excited though to have Bill English tell me what I actually missed during the event, even though I was on the ground.
Yeah, you may want to rephrase that. Your airline doesn't know where it's going. Sometimes people might think that.
So we don't. A lot of times when we're on, just to understand, a lot of times when we're on call, we have our bags packed. I could be going to Europe, I could be going to the Dominican, or I could be going to Washington, D.C. As a person that's on reserve. Sometimes they just...
Fortunately, they do know where they're going.
They know where they're going. They just haven't told me where I'm going yet, is a better way to say that.
There you go. Cool. Well, we knew where we were going for this flyover, and it was going to be right down the center line of Independence Avenue in D.C. So a little history behind this thing. The event was to commemorate the 85th anniversary of AOPA, Aircraft Owners and Pilots Association, and they had some precursors to this event before. You may have heard of the Arsenal of Democracy flights that were done. I think there was one in 2015. They tried to do one a few years ago. It was just after COVID, and the weather gods did not cooperate. The Arsenal of Democracy flyovers were World War II aircraft that some, 50, 60, 70 of those fly over Washington, D.C. to commemorate anniversaries of end of World War II or significant events there. So they decided to try a similar event with general aviation, a giant flyover of Washington, D.C. This had been in the planning for quite a long time. They, I believe, started this probably in January of 23. So well over a year of planning went into getting this going, starting to identify aircraft and pilots to do this. This wasn't just here, sign up on a Survey Monkey and you get to do this. AOPA went out and chose the aircraft they wanted, the pilots they wanted to tell the story of general aviation. What kind of starting at the end, and I'll work back to how we got involved and what it was all like. The number of airplanes ended up being, I think, 63 all total, and they were divided up into what they called chapters, so telling different stories of general aviation. So there were different eras of time. There was what they called the golden age, so the 30s and 40s aircraft, and then they had the trainer era and the boom time after World War II, and then more modern aircraft from there. And they also had different segments of the industry, such as vertical flight, so helicopters, and then business aircraft and public service aircraft. So a whole bunch of chapters in there. I think about 15 of those altogether. I've got a list. I can read them to you later. But every chapter had 3 or 4 airplanes in it representing that segment of general aviation, and we're all grouped together to fly over DC and sort of tell the story of general aviation from the beginning through the last group was very modern, single engine turboprop business aircraft. There was jets involved, a Learjet and a Citation. There were public service aircraft like firefighters and search and rescue aircraft in there. So pretty much anything you can think of that could be done by general aviation was in this lineup. So the genesis of at least how I got involved, I had vaguely heard about this planning from back. The AOPA had talked about it a little bit now and then. They didn't really make a huge deal out of it in the first year or so, but I was vaguely aware of that happened. I mean, we're relatively local here. Big Red Flight School has a lot to do with AOPA anyway, so I know what's going on. And completely coincidentally, nothing to do with all of this, I happened to be helping a friend with a restoration of an antique aircraft. We've got a little airport nearby here where I keep my airplane, where we got a bunch of old guys that like to play with old airplanes and a bunch of old tail draggers. And he had a 1946 Fairchild 24 with a Warner radial engine on it that had been sitting around in almost literally a garage for the last few years. It had failed an annual, needed fabric work, and was all taken apart. So during that summer, as project, we started putting it back together. A couple of friends and myself went to Oshkosh and took fabric covering course at Oshkosh and said, all right, well, we can do that. And off we went. So during the summer and fall, started putting that airplane back together. And in a completely coincidental conversation with my boss and Mike Ginter from AOPA, who organized this whole thing. Mike was basically the General Eisenhower of this whole thing. We're going to get on to everything he did later on. But just a casual conversation, he mentioned, everything's all set up with all this. We've got all the airplanes lined up. He said, one thing I'd really like to find. I said, what would you like to find? And he said, I'd really like to find a Fairchild with a Warner radial engine on it. And they all turned and looked at me. And I said, I did not set that up at all. And he said, what are you talking about? I said, well, happened to be halfway through putting one together. So he said, you want to be part of this? And well, I guess it'll give us motivation to finish the thing. So sure enough, it did. At that point, it was still all taken apart. We were in the process of silvering the fabric at that point. And so I said, well, guys, we got a goal. So all through the winter, we finished getting that together in our typical fashion. We said we'd have it done by Christmas. It flew first in March. So, but we made it. And sure enough, we're part of the lineup, part of what they call the Golden Age. That was the lead group. It was led by Mark Baker, the president of AOPA, in a Stagger Wing, followed up by a Howard DGA, a Waco biplane, and then us. We were the lead group that went through. And everything worked perfectly as far as the airplane goes. So that's how I ended up falling into this, completely coincidental, because there's not that many of those around, and we happen to have one 20 miles away from AOPA's headquarters. Well, once that happened, we started getting involved in the planning of this. And as I said, Mike of AOPA was, this literally did have planning that looked like D-Day. They had everything timed down to literally the second. They had to coordinate with, I don't know how many different federal agencies, Secret Service, FAA, the Capitol Police. I can't even count how many other agencies they had to coordinate with to make this whole thing happen, to where general aviation airplanes were going to, fly right down DC. So our goal basically was show up, be there, and fly good. But watching this organization was amazing. We had to go through, basically get everything, all our paperwork on the airplane all had to be perfectly in order. We were going to go through a ramp check. We were going to go through a security check. Everybody on the aircraft had to be background checked and vetted in order to do this. There were a bunch of passengers on the aircraft, also vetted for security. For the most part, AOPA sponsored VIPs went there. And I have the list. I think the governor of Baltimore, I think, or the governor of Maryland was on there, and some others. So that was the initial. We had to get everything together on the airplane, send that in. They organized with the FAA, because FAA was now going to have to ramp check 70 airplanes in a day once we all assembled up there. So the Baltimore and the Washington FSDO went through really amazing coordination and set up a special way that we could electronically transmit all of our data, all of our documents to them, so they could do all the paperwork review in advance. So that then when we showed up, inspectors would be there, look over your airplane, look at your documents, and be ready to go. So every one of those airplanes got ramp checked before we flew. And then the planning for it was, like I say, General Eisenhower level planning. Another one of the AOPA specialists who worked on the Arsenal of Democracy came up with the same sort of planning too. So we departed from Frederick, and we would have to fly a certain path down to the Potomac River, turn at the just past Kennedy Center and head down. Now we have a bunch of airplanes of all different types and capabilities and speeds. So they plotted that all out very carefully. So every group of airplanes, we had to hold a certain speed, and then the different groups would be at different speeds. So they set up the timing. So sometimes there would be a slow group would take off that was going to be behind a fast group, but the fast group would take off after them and pass them in just enough time to get the right spacing when they turned down the river, so that everybody was just coming down the Independence Avenue, coming past the Washington Monument right at the appropriate time. That was pretty amazing.
During this period, though, it's kind of interesting when you're rolling through this and you talked about some of the organizations involved. I'm sure people were watching you pretty closely, I would think, just because of security concerns in general.
Yeah, absolutely. There was a particular time frame where we had to get all the names in, drop dead date. If you didn't get the names in after that date, forget it, you weren't going. So everyone had to go through. It was TSA, Secret Service, and who knows what other three-letter agencies were sniffing around. But, we had to turn in all our information there, and then it was get it in, get checked, or you're not going. And they had, and the security on all sorts of things. There was probably a few things that I probably shouldn't say, but they were also very tight on what we could and couldn't do with the airplanes as well, where we could put video, what things we could take pictures of, as you'd imagine. Right? So,
absolutely. I'm wondering, did they share with you some of the history behind the event? Because afterwards, or during the event, listening to Tom Haynes talk, I did not realize this, but it coincides with the 85th anniversary of AOPA. Right. But interestingly enough, it also coincides with the 85th anniversary of National Aviation Day, which FDR actually put into place back in, I think it was like August or something like that, of '39. And I was like, wow, was that a coincidence? Do you know if they thought that one out?
I don't know that. And when is Aviation Day?
That's it's August. Right? Oh gosh, National Aviation Day is on August 19th. 1939 was the first. August 19th, 2024 is the next one coming up. So
I don't know that the day was significant anyway.
Okay.
Because we were on, it was the weekend of Mother's Day. So this right. flyover happened on May 11th, which I don't know that May 11th was significant to AOPA, or it was just there's usually really good weather on May 11th in Washington, D.C., so we shot for that. I just don't know. I guess I could go look up when AOPA
But I do know, as you were showing the 85th anniversary hat of AOPA, and I think that's, and anybody who's interested in AOPA, by the way, one of the greatest organizations out there, and really helps us keep us flying here in the United States, and it protects your freedoms to fly, and also promotes aviation, which is terrific.
Exactly, and that's what this was all about, to show, on a beautiful day, and it did turn out to be a beautiful day. showing anybody, prospective pilots or just anybody that ever took any interest in aviation at all, showing what's out there, our long history, and then what's around today, and how much fun you can have with this. I mean, a lot of this was a lot of the different kinds of activities that people can get involved with aviation. It's not just not to throw shade on airlines, Carl, but there's other things you can do with your pilot's license other than work your way up to the airlines.
Absolutely.
And we showed a whole lot of that out there, and hopefully that inspired some people. In fact, the airplane we flew, the Fairchild, so I flew it with the previous owner. During the whole course of this, that airplane has been sold to a student pilot, so a youngish guy who is learning to fly. And that will be his first airplane, and his airplane will be a 1946 fabric radial engine tail dragger. So carrying on kind of traditions with new pilots and old airplanes.
Yeah, absolutely.
So we can go on to the execution of this. Right now, there's the planning was amazing, and the way I can't say enough about how detailed everything was down to. We had to fly exactly in our group 90 knots, right? And exactly at the specified altitudes, and nice spacing behind the airplanes in front of us. Everybody had radio calls, and we were down to the second. Mark started his engine at exactly the right time, and then we, checked in, the different flights, made sure we had comms. Ground crew there at Frederick mustered everybody out, and we had a specific takeoff time to roll. Air Boss, Wade Boggs, I'm sure you've heard of him, does a lot of Air Boss at Oshkosh and other great big air shows. Launched everybody out to exactly the second intervals, and everyone stuck to exactly the plan we had to do. They coordinated all this with Potomac Approach, the ATC facility around, so we were on appropriate squawk codes. We were pre-coordinated to fly into the special flight rules area and the flight. I see you in the chat. Yes, Wayne Boggs, the airshow announcer, not Wade Boggs, formerly of the Boston Red Sox, right? So, I see that in the chat. But we have. Now I lost my train of thought over that.
Yeah, actually, it's funny just to have, speaking of Wayne and Wade Boggs, seeing both of them out of the airport that I used to fly out of at Peter O'Knight Airport, both really, interested in aviation in different ways, that's for sure.
Oh, there you go. Exactly. Right. Potomac Approach we'd coordinated this all already with Potomac, or Mike did, that we all already had our CIFRA flight plans in. We didn't need the special FRZ background, when they call it the pin, to go into the freeze around DC. In our airplane, we both did already, but didn't need to. A lot of folks didn't. So all that was pre-coordinated. We had a set bank of transponder codes. So as soon as we came up, we were checking in, radar contact, boom, fly this heading, and head on through. So they at the approach control set up a dedicated position just for the flyover. So we headed all in the stream down the Potomac River, turned right, basically at the American Legion Bridge, headed down past Roslyn. You'd see Kennedy Center and the Washington Monument ahead of us. It was basically a turn around a point around the Washington Monument to roll out onto Independence Avenue, and then straight down, right down the center line. This wasn't just sort of kind of be in the vicinity. It was right down the middle of the road is how we had to fly this. They gave us landmarks of what buildings to fly over, turn here, and then it was sort of a scatter from that point to go back to Frederick. Some went over the Nat Stadium and looped around to the northeast. Our group, we turned to the right, pretty much directly overhead the FAA building, and then right over the top of Reagan Airport, and back around by Manassas and up to Frederick that way. So again, that was part of the planning as well. Spread everybody out so that as we were returning, the last group was taking off, and then everything came back in. Not in the same order, but everyone came back in without too big a cluster to get back in there. Every single airplane got off without a hitch. There was not a single mechanical cancellation from it. Everybody flew. No violations, no problems at all.
Hey, Bill, I just want to jump in here and say, will you explain to people just how important and unusual this was for Not only, I mean, because, pilots in that area can go through the security awareness training to get certified to fly in the special flight rules area around DC, but not only to fly in the restricted zone, but to go into that prohibited area, P56. I mean, that has not happened to my knowledge since 9/11 with general aviation aircraft. I mean, it's just incredible the organizational feat and collaboration that had to go on to plan this and to allow this to happen. And especially because and I can talk about this in a second, but when I was watching live on AOPA's YouTube channel as all this was unfolding, John and I had actually made plans to be there that weekend. Our son lives in Arlington. It didn't work out for us to go. We had to cancel at the last minute. So I watched on YouTube. And then when, the couple of aircraft that went by that were able to even release their smoke in the aircraft, I was like, wow, it just gave me chill bumps. But, talk about how unusual that is.
Sure it is. Yeah, for folks not in the DC area, we're used to some of that here. I mean, Big Red Flight School is right in the SFRA. So around DC, there's really two sort of rings of special security airspace. Never mind the Class Bravo airspace. That's easy, right? Compared to all this. So after 9/11, there were different steps, and then eventually we settled on the way it is now. There's a big ring around DC called the SFRA, Special Flight Rules Area, which is there for identification, security identification of aircraft. And it's not terribly hard to fly into. There's an online course you can take through your Wings account. And you can get into some of the satellite airports around DC without too many hoops to go through, and there's lots of routine operations there. I mean, we have some very busy airports that fly in and out of there. So that's not too bad. There's some things you have to do, but pretty much anybody can do that. The inner ring inside of that, the FRZ, the Flight Restricted Zone, different story altogether. That's just centered on Reagan Airport. It's not a perfect circle. It's about 15 miles around Reagan. That pretty much is a no-go for general aviation. There's two now. There used to be three. They called them the DC-3. Three general aviation airports inside that ring, College Park, Hyde, and Potomac. Hyde Field's last year closed, so now there's just two general aviation airports in that ring. College Park, the oldest continuously operating airport in the U.S., as far as I know, and Potomac Field. So pilots can take special training, get a background check, and to operate in and out of those two airports. There's a bunch more hoops to jump through. You just can't go there and do touch and goes or anything like that. And you're not going right over DC. If you're going to go to those airports, they route you around and you come in over some unpopulated areas away from the city itself to get into those two airports. And then, of course, there's Reagan, DCA, which is pretty much airlines. The only GA that goes in there is biz jets, basically, that, again, have gone through special vetting and background checks and special TSA procedures. And they're also not just flying right down the middle of Washington, D.C., because we have, yet again, inside that, prohibited areas. We've all, I think, learned about prohibited areas or special use airspace. And so there's a couple of those in there. There's P56 is this. There's a little circle around the White House and a big oblong area that's protecting the main buildings and areas in D.C., around the Capitol, around the White House, and some other areas in D.C. And then even that's all chopped up with different levels and things like that we had to go through special procedures for it, that we were only allowed to do exactly this path, exactly that path in order to fly through there. No other general aviation airplane has done that. You could count, law enforcement and things like that, but routine Joe Citizen in his airplane has not done anything like that in D.C. since 9/11. Like you say.
Yeah, and that's actually so significant because, like I was going to say, I remember friends of mine would be able to fly down there, and just with a little bit of extra care, you get in there. Now, I mean, it's been shut off for so long. It's longer than many people have been flying, actually, GA, amazingly enough. So that was actually, like you said, with the chill bumps, I thought that was just incredible to be able to see GA aircraft actually flying down the mall. By the way, as an aside, going into to see the Smithsonian that day, I actually went to go inside, and you couldn't get, the advanced tickets. You couldn't get a ticket for 2 days. I mean, for that day and the day after, they were sold out. You have timed entry. It's free, but you have to get the timed entry. That was how many people were there to go to this event, and it was just so neat to see that vibe, to see that vibrancy of people. I saw a lot of Sun and Fun hats. I saw a lot of Oshkosh hats and the OPA hats. So I was just kind of like cheering as I was walking down the mall, taking pictures of the Washington Monument. So, but going back to what you said about the prohibited airspace, P-56, like you said, there's only portions of that you went through. But it was pretty interesting to see. What was it like from your perspective? I mean, you were looking right out the window at the Washington Monument. Some really cool stuff. Yeah.
So I'll tell you, it was kind of like 30 seconds over Tokyo because we had a lot to do. So there was not a lot of time for sightseeing because we had to stick to our formation and in trail, make sure we were right on our timing to turn, and eyeballs up for the landmarks. We had no practice run, hadn't done this before. The only way that most of us had seen this path was Mark and Pete Montine of CNN and some others had flown a test run a few weeks earlier and took video of it, and that's up on the AOPA site as well. So they took videos of that so we could study it and see, okay, this is what the landmarks are going to look like. These are the turns that we're going to make. And they didn't even fly it exactly as we did. They went offset so they could point the cameras at the things that we were going to see from our airplanes. So we had to be real heads up and say, oh yeah, I recognize that, make that turn. And of course, we all had to hope our lead was doing it right as well. In our case, it was Mark, and he'd done it before, so that was good. So we had to be heads up on that, making basically this turns about a point around the Washington Monument. Watch out for the helicopter that was hovering over the tidal basin filming us. So I had to squeeze in between there and then hold that center line. And if you don't know, DC is not that big a city. Even at 90 knots, it goes by pretty quick. So we got enough time to say, yep, that's it. We're on target. That's looking good. Wow, look at all those people down there around the Washington Monument. Holy moly, it's time to turn. and off we went back down by Smithsonian Castle and then headed out to Reagan.
So now you're going back to what you said about people observing. How about those photos? I mean, that must be really cool. And you must have, I'm assuming, gotten some great photos, or the person that was with you. When did we get to see those? 'Cause I remember AOPA saying something about they were going to come out with some video later on. When's that all coming out?
Right. So a lot of folks have put stuff up online already on social media. I'm terribly poor at posting things on social media. We've got some good stuff from our airplane. We'll get that up soon. We had a couple of cameras going, one on the strut, one in the front window, and then we just handheld one around and pointed it at various things. The AOPA has put out a little bit already on their website of, professionally done high-def stuff, and some other folks have done some pretty good jobs on social media putting it out. Apparently, and you'll see this on the AOPA website, I think we have a link in the show notes, that this helicopter that they had up there, with professional, TV-grade, movie-grade cameras on it, is still being edited and reviewed by Secret Service to make sure that they didn't capture anything that the Secret Service doesn't want posted up there, because they have very high grade cameras. So, but there's definitely some stuff to be found out there on social media and on the AOPA website that shows you what the view looked like.
Yeah, that's exciting. One of the things that I think I take for granted, I fly into DC all the time, and the vantage points we get to see are amazing. And I always like to tell people, hey, look out the window, because you're not going to see this very often, especially from this vantage point. But it's so cool now that we've actually seen that from a general aviation aircraft. And I really hope they're going to be able to do more of these. And which leads to the question, do you know of anything else coming up in the future as far as any of these type of events?
So, Yeah, they didn't brief us on anything like that there. They've had a history. They've done the Arsenal of Democracy before, so I think they're getting better at doing these. Who knows what the next one might be if they do another? But I haven't heard of any particular plans. So.
Yeah, I would love to see it. I think this is the coolest thing, and it meant a lot to me to see this happening because it did show the importance of having an organization like AOPA involved in aviation, because they truly are our advocates for the freedoms to fly that we have here in the United States. And if you go back and listen to some other past episodes of people that fly in certain other countries, it's amazing the freedom that we do have to go out there and fly, unlike other places, and the affordability. So if you're thinking about joining AOPA, watch that video that they put out there. That might actually spur you to become a member. And I think all of us are members here, and can't say enough about them. That's for sure.
Yeah, I have to say, I was able to watch it live, and if you get a chance, it's about an hour and 15 minutes long. It's so inspirational and educational, because you do get to see all these different eras and different aspects of the aviation industry in regards to general aviation. I mentioned I had chill bumps just the whole time. Tom Haynes and Miles O'Brien were the commentators on the video. They did an excellent job.
They were outstanding.
It was great. And their excitement, because they're seeing this happening, and it's like general aviation history being made all over again. And you could, it was just really palpable. And a couple of times, I'll be honest, I kind of teared up a little bit. It was just very, very special.
Absolutely. Well, I do hope they have some future flyovers, Leslie. You know why? I'll tell you why. Because then maybe I will actually get to see it this time. And I know Bill's not going to let me down for this one, but he's been giving me grief already, is that I actually missed the flyover, and I was right there in D.C. Now, I know I had to get ready for work and all, but still I had a chance to run down there during that. And it wasn't, and I hate to admit this, and again, with my schedule, I don't know which city I'm going to wind up in, but I didn't put this one on my calendar, and I usually put events on my calendar. So the next time they have this, I hope people will email me and let me know that these important events are happening. And I can't tell you how mad I am at myself for not actually being able to watch that and actually being there in D.C., just walking distance from the mall.
Yeah, our son lives in Rosslyn, and just a few blocks off the Potomac. And he, unfortunately, is not a pilot. He did not follow in his mom's footsteps, but he knows how important it is to me. And AOPA is actually they've done, some of the people with AOPA have kind of helped him along in his career. And so I'll be forever grateful for that. But he ran upstairs on his rooftop of his apartment building and took a few pictures and sent me some video. And it was it was so exciting, even for him, who is not a pilot.
Yeah, absolutely. And it was quite a buzz actually later on that day when I was flying out of DCA, people discussing this whole flyover with these small airplanes. So it did have impact on, I think, everybody. And it's really, like I said, I'm hoping more of this will happen in the future. And it also, it really solidifies the fact that it's really important to have somebody advocating for us in DC, just like AOPA. Bill, anything else you want to add as far as the flyover and anything in the future that you might know about that's happening that we might want to be filled in on, as far as maybe even the videos that you're going to come out with or that you can let out?
Yeah, so hopefully we'll see those videos from the helicopter soon. And you mentioned the afterwards. It was pretty amazing afterwards when we got back to Frederick. Everybody there, we just all step out of our airplanes like, wow, we really did that, and it really worked. It was a little scary. For the day before, the weather was kind of sketchy, but it dawned good. No, it was amazing. I guess just in a general theme, for anybody that's out there that's flying and looking to learn to fly, you may not end up falling into something this spectacular, but there's a lot out there to do in flying and to get experience with and to have fun with. Don't be afraid to stretch out a little bit beyond what you think the tracks are that you're into when you're flying and when you're training, learning to fly. get involved in something that's a little bit outside your comfort zone, and you'll never know what sort of thing you'll fall into and find some spectacular experience.
Well said, Bill. I think I appreciate your coming here today just to talk about this event, and we can't wait to see more of your adventures, both online and also share them here on the podcast. With that said, let's move on to the after landing checklist with the picks of the week. And I'm going to start off with the picks of the week because one of the ways that I did get to see the actual flyover when Leslie told me, hey, Carl, the flyover is happening now, because I'm not in the best shape, and it was 1.25 miles from the mall, so I couldn't actually run down there to see it. But it's through the YouTube channel over at AOPA. And they had that live DC flyover, and it was really spectacular what they put together online. And that was live, and I think it was the National History Museum. It was one of the museums that they were on the roof of that Smithsonian allowed them to actually sit up there and watch this from and broadcast from. And I thought that was really cool. But I also love the fact that they had, within this video, all these little segments on general aviation and some of the history of general aviation and the significance of this event, and also obviously the significance of AOPA and getting involved with aviation and advocacy. So I think that's a great thing to look at, is that one YouTube. I have a link to it, Live DC Flyover, AOPA's National Celebration of General Aviation. Bill, what is your pick of the week?
So my pick of the week, I guess I kind of hinted at it. It's a resource page for pilots to obtain the training and the background check and all to fly into the DC freeze. And it's called WashingtonFRZ.com. Outlines how you have to do that. It's not terribly difficult. A little bit tedious paperwork. You got to deal with some government paperwork. But take a look at that if you happen to be in the DC area or not, and maybe flying here and would like to go and fly a general aviation airplane into a, maybe College Park, very historic airport, or Potomac, close to DC. You're not going to fly right down Independence Avenue, but it's about as close as you can get.
Absolutely. So, Leslie, what is your pick of the week?
My pick of the week is flybackcountryusa.com, and this is a website I discovered on a Facebook group I'm a member of. It's a Facebook group about fly-in airport restaurants. Well, this 21-year-old student, I say student pilot, he's a commercial pilot working on his CFI currently. He has made free a download that you can download into your ForeFlight as user waypoints or custom content, and you can use it as a map layer in ForeFlight, and it pinpoints an ever-growing, being updated list of flying airport on-site restaurants. And you click on the airport and the pinpoint, and it gives you all the information, phone number, hours of operation, and the website if there's one available for those airports. So he does this for free. If you go to flybackcountryusa.com, you can download that into ForeFlight. He does have a donate button, so if you have the extra funds and want to throw him a few dollars for his time and trouble and help him with his flight training, then you're able to do that. But if not, no worries. He's very passionate about this and wants to help his fellow pilots out. And I thought this was great as we are getting into the summer flying season.
Absolutely. Really cool. Flyback Country USA. Absolutely awesome website. I was kind of checking it out. I love what I thought was a Taylorcraft. It actually is an experimental aircraft that was kind of designed off the Taylorcraft with the big Bush tires. So also check out some of the pictures that they have out there on the website. So Leslie, thanks so much for that. Bill, again, thanks for coming and talking about this. We can't wait to see more pictures. I really appreciate that. And if you're watching or listening right now, do me a favor and kind of hit the like button for us, because that actually helps people find us, but also it helps us because we have this thing called the Pay It Forward program, where we try to get other people involved in aviation through the scholarships that we have, the scholarships guide. And every dollar we raise on this website will actually go towards that scholarships guide and paying it forward for other folks. And if you want to find out more about how you can get one of those free scholarships guides, go to aviationcareerspodcast.com/free or stuckmikeavcast.com/free. And we do have the sponsor of this show, STEM Flights, who's giving away some free scholarships guides by using that coupon code STEMFlights. Great organization, stemflights.org. But most importantly, just like Bill said, try to do something today to kind of stretch yourself in your aviation, to move forward with your love of aviation, your passion. It could be just something by going out and using a home flight simulator, going in and down to the airport and just watching airplanes take off and land, because you never know, you might get a ride in one of those. And also, if you want to check us out in the future at some of the air shows, we will be at the Florida International Air Show that's down in Punta Gorda. We do that one every year. We help them do their podcast down there. You can find more at FloridaAirShow.com. Well, I appreciate you all listening to us, and I do encourage you to do something today to move forward with your passion of aviation and try to stretch your aviation passion by doing something new. Challenge yourself. We'll talk to you next episode. Safe flying.